Our final presenter in this session before the closing remarks will be Stephen Rzehak, who is the General Partner and Executive Vice President of the Midship Group, which is an integrated chartering logistics service company based in New York. Stephen specializes in ocean transportation for greenfield project development and assisted with the bulk exports for the Dundas Mineral Sand project from Rzehak this past summer. Stephen has been with the Midship Group for 30 years after completing his studies at Georgetown University and obtaining his MBA from New York University. Welcome.
First of all, thank you very much to the Greenland Business Association for allowing me to come and make this presentation. The benefit of being the last speaker up is that brevity is a virtue, and that you get to see everybody else's presentation and see if you can tie yours into it a little bit more effectively. Just looking at the projects that were put in place or are being put in place now, each of them have a dynamic whereby they are remote. And one of the key words in the title is bulk mineral shipping in remote locations. I take remote as any place that doesn't have an established port facility. So when you look at the presentations, both for Aarhus and Nuuk, that's what a port wants to be when it grows up. But what is effectively available right now for most other locations are basically greenfield operations. Now, my background is in establishing logistics programs and opportunities for projects of all different sizes and shapes, whether they have infrastructurals available to them immediately or whether there's nothing available. I want to speak specifically about bulk shipping, and the two bulk shipping operations that have taken place in Greenland this past year are in Rzehak for the Dundas Ilmenite project and the White Mountain and North Site project further south. Fundamentally, when you look at a greenfield project, there are a number of different requirements that you have to look at. And just going through some of the projects, you have to say, okay, what am I moving? Containerization is something that will be covered on a different presentation. This is for bulk transportation. Things that are too voluminous to go into containers, whether it's 5,000 metric tons or 50,000 metric tons of cargo. To get that cargo onto a ship, you need land-based assets. So with land-based asset support, what are you looking at? Are you looking at ocean transport options for containers, packaged materials, or loose bulk? I'll focus on loose bulk as the last of the three. You have to look at what your cargo volumes are. So are you talking about a sustainable project at 5,000 tons of annual production, or are you hoping to scale that up to 600 or 800 or 1 million tons per year of export caliber? And then what do you need on the land to be able to do that? Okay, delivery options to vessel. Is there going to be a huge value add in what you're putting into the system? Or are you going to be keeping it within a very tight budget process? You can do both. It's just a matter of what the value of the product is eventually to the market and what you're able to invest to be able to put that project to market. Loading windows. What are loading windows? Loading windows in my business basically mean when can you actually load a ship? Well, if you look at certain locations, if you're looking at eastern Greenland, it's pretty much ice-free for the year-round. But there are pockets of times when you can't. If you're looking at southwest Greenland, for the most part, also ice-free. The further you go up the west coast, though, your loading windows become narrower. By the time you get to the North Site project, you're probably looking at about 10 months of clear shipping. Further up, it might only be 2 or 3 or 4 months. The project up in the far north, you would have to be determined what is the ice-free considerations at that point. And then you have to figure out how am I going to build infrastructure to get the volumes that I want through that port for that time constraint. Delivery requirements. Where are you going with the cargo? Are you going to be going to Canada or Europe, or are your ambitions further afield, going to East Asia, where there's a heavy demand for a lot of the minerals that are being produced? You then have to calculate what is my cost structure going to be for warehousing considerations. Because moving 5,000 metric tons of cargo from Greenland to eastern Canada is plausible. moving 5,000 tons of cargo from eastern Greenland to China, less plausible under the same financial constraints. Your differential, your delta in freight costs could be anywhere from $60 to $100 a ton, depending upon where you're actually loading and where you're going to. Preloading logistical support. Who do you have on the ground to be able to help you get cargo on board a ship? Locations review, open water access, depth, obstructions, and tide. All these go into creating a sustainable model for transportation where you're coming from. Now, I've gone through a lot of verbiage. Open water, ice restriction, chartering concerns, survey and quality controls, all go to the application of a transportation program that is sustainable, safely sustainable. And now, in this, again, to keep it brief, you look at, okay, how do you apply this to actual facilities that have been put in place? There's two great success stories so far. One is the project that we were working on over the past 2 years for Blue Jay Mining at Rzehak. As was mentioned before, we ended up going into a greenfield location and moving 42,000 tons of cargo on one ship in one lift this past summer. That was unprecedented, and it will probably hold a record for quite some time. Now, as you can see from this picture, well, I should take a step back. What did we do? We didn't just go in and say, okay, we're going to go and do this. We went through a competitive bidding process with a number of companies that were having the assets available to do the project. The winning bidder, it was a company called Pangea Nordic Bulk Carriers, based both in Denmark and in the United States. They put together a fundamental package for us that was, first and foremost, a safe operation. It minimized the risks of damages to the environment, damages to the equipment, and personal damages. With basically a few vehicles on ground and everything else needing to be brought in, a causeway was created, was built out, containers were sunk with rocks to create a face, and a ship was then brought in to bring a barge, and a barge was affixed to the end of that loading location, thus creating an artificial jetty. Fully temporary, fully cost-efficient, and fully safe. That barge never touched ground. It never hit the shore. It was moored, properly managed, and maintained throughout the operation. The ship, the Nordic Barents, was then brought in. As you can see, there's a grouping of stackers. The stackers were brought in on the barge. All of this is temporary equipment. It was brought in specifically for the one cargo lifting. As it was mentioned earlier, 42,000 tons of cargo was moved from the pile just to the right of that conveyor system, brought on board that ship. The ship was shifted back and forth, and within 2 business days, 42,000 tons of cargo was loaded. I challenge most Western-based ports to be able to match that. This is just before the ship sailed and made its way down to Canada, a 10-day transit. Now, a different type of operation, a little bit more firmly established. This is the Hudson Resources project, where they fixed a barge and put permanent storage in place. This is based upon a much larger expected volume, and this is the next iteration of what a location can be. And just to repeat one of the photographs from earlier on, you can see the logistics distribution coming right to the shore. Remote is, in my opinion, not meaning that it's far away. It's just that there's nothing there yet to be able to anchor that facility or that loading operation to a longer-term solution for product export. As we've shown in these two successes, there is the ability for any one of the projects in Greenland, in any area of the country, to be able to put together temporary systems or more permanent systems, safely, cost-effectively, and viably for the business. So that was basically it, and a little pitch, and that's it.